This is your factoring review, so we are going to look at just some of the problems from your review worksheet. Remember that on all factoring problems, on the review, on the quiz, later we're going to get to problems where we use factoring as like the first step in a process. Anytime we are factoring, you should always be following these steps. So we always check for a GCF no matter what. Then after we check for GCF, we kind of have a split off depending on what type of polynomial we have. If it fits into the special product, so if it's a difference of squares or PST, we factor those using our formulas that we learned in, I think it was 26-2 maybe. Then if it's not a special product and it's of the form x squared plus bx plus c, then that's when we do our chart factoring and we look for what multiplies to the constant and adds to the coefficient of the middle term. If it's not a special product and it's not a plain x squared, it's some number in front of the x squared, then that is when we either do guess and check or the slide divide bottoms up method. So just going to pick a few of them, and we're going to start with number 2. So number 2 was 2x squared minus x minus 15. So when I look at this, if you've got you should probably have this little guy in front of you. If you're looking at your flow chart, first we look for a GCF. So this, I'm going to write a 1 here. We wouldn't write that in a final answer, but just as part of the work, I'm going to write that here. So we know there's no GCF because this guy's a 1. So next I look for special products. On your flow chart, I've written what the special products look like. Again, a difference of squares is a squared minus b squared. That's a binomial. This guy is not a binomial, so it can't be that. So then I look to see if it could be a PST. In order to be a PST, the first and the last terms both have to be perfect squares, so meaning they have a square root that comes out evenly. These do not, so we know it's not that. So then, it's not the middle because there's a number in front of the x squared. So I'm either going to do guess and check or the slide divide bottoms up. So I will do one of the other method too. This one I'm going to do with slide divide bottoms up, but I will do one where I review the guess and check method as well. So slide is my first method, so slide the 2 back to multiply with the negative 15. So 2 went out from the front, and now I've got a negative 30 in the back. The other part of the slide method is to factor it with chart factoring. So what multiplies to negative 30 and adds to negative 1. So because it's negative, that means I've got lots of choices. It could be negative 1, positive 30, positive 1, negative 30. Could be 2 and negative 15, or negative 2 and positive 15. Could be 3 and negative 10, or negative 3 and positive 10. 30 is not divisible by 4. It is divisible by 5, so 5 and negative 6, negative 5, positive 6. Remember, when you're doing chart factoring, you don't have to list them all. If you know just when you ask the question what the winning numbers are, that's fine. But I'm demonstrating it this way because for those of you who keep having trouble finding the right ones, this is how you should list the factors. Start at 1 and then get bigger by 1 each time until you flip back around to the other side. So my winning factors here, the ones that add to negative 1, are down here. 5 and negative 6 do add to negative 1. None of the others do. So that means x plus 5 times x minus 6. All right, so slide step is done. Now I need to do the divide step. The divide step, I divide by the a, which in this case is 2. So I divide the constants both by 2. Remember that part of the divide step is reducing the fractions. 5 over 2 doesn't reduce, but negative 6 over 2 does. That becomes negative 3. So I'm done with divide. Now bottoms up. So I've got a denominator here that's in the bottom. I bring it up in front of the x. So that becomes 2x plus 5. This one didn't have a denominator, so it stays x minus 3. As always, you should check your answer. This is the answer, but you should mentally check it. 2x times x is 2x squared. Outsides are negative 6x, and the insides are 5x, which does give me negative 1x. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. So I multiplied it out. It does work. It is exactly what I need it to be. All right. Next one that we're going to look at is number 3, actually, the very next problem. So number 3, 4x squared plus 14x plus 12. So always follow the flowchart steps. First I look for the GCF. 4, 14, and 12 are all even, so I know for sure they're all divisible by 2. 14 isn't divisible by 4, so 2 is the GCF. So I take the GCF out first, and to figure out what goes inside the parenthesis, I divide them all by the GCF. So first term becomes 2x squared, then plus 7x, then plus 6. Just because I factored once doesn't always mean that I'm done. So now I go back and see if this can factor any further. It doesn't have a GCF. It's not a special product because it has 3 terms, which makes it not a difference of squares. It's not a PST because 2 and 6 don't have perfect square roots. So that means that, again, this is an AX squared, so this is either guess and check or slide divide bottoms up. Since I already demonstrated slide divide bottoms up, I'm going to demonstrate guess and check this time. So guess and check, I list the factors of A, so in this case 2 and 1. And then the factors of C, which are 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Then I get ready to do my guessing. And I can't, there is no eraser on this app, so when I don't get it right, I'm just going to have to cross it out and try again, but of course you are welcome to erase. So I've got my GCF out in front still. Since 2 and 1 are the only factors for the front, I know it's 2x and 1x. And now I just need to try my possibilities. Remember that I said I always try the ones that are closer together first, so I'm going to try the 2 with the 3. So I guessed, now I'm going to check. My outside terms, 2x times 3 is 6x, and 2x in the middle, which gives me a total of 8x. That's not what I want. I want 7x, so I know that this is not correct. So this guess was no good. So if you're using pencil, you don't have to rewrite it all, but I have to. So remember, before I can eliminate 2 and 3, I need to try them in the other order. So instead of putting the 2 with the 2x, I'm going to put the 3 with the 2x, and then check it that way. So outsides, 2x times 2 is 4x. Insides, 3 times x is 3x. That does equal 7x. So this is my factored answer because it does multiply back out to give me my original. All right, next one we're going to look at is number 6, which is 3x squared minus 54x plus 27. All right, so always use the flowchart. And of course you have to know it. You don't get to use the chart on the quiz, so make sure you know the steps. But first step is always GCF. So I know that 3 and 27 are both divisible by 3, so check 54 to see if it's divisible by 3, which it is. It's 3 times 18. So 3 is my GCF, so I'm going to divide them all by 3. Gives me x squared minus 18x plus 9 left on the inside. So I did GCF. Now I'm going to look to see if what remains factors further. So it doesn't have a GCF anymore. It can't be a difference of squares because it's 3 terms. I look to see if it could be a PST because 9 does have a perfect square root and so does x squared. But it fails my PST test because PSTs, the first and the last have to be perfect squares, but the middle term has to be double the product of the square roots. The square roots are 3 and x. 2 times 3 times x is 6x, not 18. So this is not a PST. So then I look to see if I can chart factor it. I'm not guessing and checking because this is not ax squared. It's just plain x squared. So I'd be looking for what multiplies to 9 and adds to negative 18. So because the middle term's negative, I know the factors I need to list are negative. So negative 1 times negative 9 or negative 3 times negative 3. This adds to negative 10, this adds to negative 6, and there are no other factors. So that means this is not chart factorable. So the one step of factoring is all that I could do here. So GCF only, this is my final answer. All right, next one I want to look at is number 7. So 16x squared minus 40x plus 25. So first I look for a GCF. These two are divisible by 5, but this one's not. These two are divisible by 4, but this one's not. So there is no GCF. So then I look for special products. I know it's not a difference of squares because it has 3 terms. Now I check for PST. The reason I'm checking is because when I look at these first and last, they do have perfect square roots. So 4x and 5 would be the square roots, so then I just need to check the middle term. 2 times 4x times 5, that's 8x times 5, which is 40x. That is the middle term. So this means this is a PST. Remember that PSTs, if you look back at your notes, they factor into a single parenthesis squared. So the square root of 16x squared is 4x. The square root of 25 is 5. And then I put the minus sign in the middle because the middle term is negative. So remember, the pattern is square root of the front goes in the front, square root of the back goes in the back, and the sign of the middle goes in the middle. So this is our final answer here, 4x minus 5 quantity squared. All right, next one that I want to look at is number 9. So number 9, the original is x squared minus 3x minus 10. So first I look for a GCF, which there isn't one. So then I look for special products. So can't be a difference of squares because it's not 2 terms. Can't be a PST because 10 doesn't have a perfect square root and because this is a minus. So not a PST. So then I'm going to try chart factoring because it's a plain x squared. So chart factoring, I'm looking for what multiplies to negative 10 and adds to negative 3. So again, you don't have to list all of them, but if you're having trouble finding them, this is the systematic way to do it. So 2, negative 5, negative 2, positive 5, and that's it for the factors of negative 10. So this adds to 9, negative 9, this adds to negative 3, so I found the winner here. So x plus 2 times x minus 5, and then I check it by foiling. X squared minus 5x plus 2x minus 10 does give me back the original. So this is my final answer on 9. Next, we're going to number 10, which is 4x squared minus 196. So GCF first. I know that they're at least divisible by 2 because 196 is even, but 196 is also divisible by 4. So 4 is my GCF here. So divide by 4. That leaves me with x squared minus 49. Then I look to see if this factors further. Remember, guys, if it's a binomial, the only ways it could factor are with GCF or difference of squares. So I only need to ask myself, is this a difference of squares? Which, yes, it is. These both have perfect square roots, and it is a difference, a minus. So the square root of x squared is x, square root of 49 is 7. On difference of squares, it's not like a PST. It's not a single parenthesis squared. It's two parentheses, one with a plus, one with a minus. Square root of the front goes in the fronts. Square root of the back goes in the back. So 4 times x plus 7 times x minus 7. All right, last one that I want to look at is number 13, which is 5x squared plus 80. So GCF first, always, always, always. So these are both divisible by 5, so take the 5 out, which leaves me x squared plus 16. This is also a binomial. So the only way it could factor is as a difference of squares. So these do have perfect square roots, but this is not a difference. This is a plus sign. There's no such thing on our chart as a sum of squares, just difference of squares. And look at the format, a squared minus b squared. So the x squared plus 16 does not factor any further, which means this is another one, just like number 6 was, where GCF is the only type of factoring that you can do. All right, so we have gone through every type of factoring that we've learned. Here you've got chart factoring, here you've got GCF, difference of squares, more GCF, PST, guess and check, slide, divide, bottoms up. So we've gone and we've reviewed all of those. So all you need to do is now practice until you can do it correctly by yourself with no notes. Good luck studying.